The osprey.
Oh my gosh, stop. Did I tell you about the that I got falling in a way? Yes, I was getting into the car and the lady said something about Boy Scouts house and I said, well, yes, this is the top Boy Scouts. Okay. Oh, they really are. I think it may be just general purpose operating. Give me a...
Any swoops are just to the left of that beige colored pontoon boat. Take you right a look at it. Just see him?
Yep.
You gotta get binoculars.
Yep. I don't know if you can film them.
Chicken's on the surface right around 10 o'clock.
The kids get out, they put the kids in the boats.
There is a speed limit on the lake of 40 during the day and 20 at night. That's the only restriction for boating on the lake. This facility off to the left is a dual boat ramp that was put in by the state of New Hampshire back in 2002 to open up the lake better for public boating access. There it flows south about 20 miles to the town of Franklin where it merges with the Merrimack River. The Merrimack River flows all the way out to sea just south of the New Hampshire border in Newburyport, Mass. So from mountaintop to ocean, the Squam water has a long journey. As I mentioned back at the dock, the lake is 7 miles long from east to west. But because of all the islands and peninsulas that are on the lake, you can't see one end or the other no matter where you're positioned. But generally speaking, straight ahead about 7 miles is the other end of the lake. On the shores of Big Squam Lake. It had to have a minimum setback of 15 feet from the water's edge. It has to paint your house in natural colors so it blends right in with the landscape. They also ask you to leave as many trees in your property as possible, essentially to hide your house and make the shoreline look more wilderness than residential. You can see that's worked out quite well, but you will see exceptions, and a perfect exception is coming off the right side of the boat here. This lighthouse can't get any closer to the water's edge than it is. And of course, all the exceptions were grandfathered in before the ordinance took place. Right after the movie on Golden Pond was released in 1981, commercial developers caught wind of this lake, and with their deep pockets, they wanted to come out here and buy up the shoreline and put in resorts, marinas, hotels, restaurants, and things of that nature. However, we've had an organization on this lake for the last 105 years called the Squam Lake Association. And their charter right in the very beginning is to keep this lake looking pristine and wilderness-like. As I mentioned back at the dock, we do have bald eagles on the lake. If you're interested in trying to find one on your own, I'll give you some ideas where to look. Typically, they like to land high in the trees and lean out over the water. They do so they can wait for the opportunity to swoop down on a fish that may be near the surface. Oftentimes, when they catch a fish, they'll land on large rocks right on the shoreline and use a rock as a table while they're eating their fish. Of course, the third place you're going to see them is in flight. It might be a point A to point B flight, or they may be up high in the sky soaring in a clockwise or counterclockwise direction. boat and distant horizon, you can see some larger mountains now showing up. The one right at 12 o'clock in front of the boat, it's got kind of a sharp summit to it, is Mount Shikorowa. Its elevation is 3,900 feet. That's not snow you see on the summit of Shikorowa, that's actually bare granite ledge. Mount Shikorowa was actually the subject of a book written many years ago called Books of the Mountain about the pioneer days of New Hampshire. It has a bit of historical significance. Back in 1881, it became the site of the very first resident summer camp for boys in the United States. It's a camp based on the Episcopalian religion, and for that reason, an open-air chapel. In 1906, when the Shikorowa Chapel Association was formed, many of the original members of the association were actually boys that were camping on this island back when it was a boys' camp. They came out here with the notion of enlarging the open-air chapel on the island and putting dock space around it to make it boat accessible. And they started conducting church services out here every Sunday morning for the general public during the summer months. And all that's true right up to the present day. If you look over in Church Island to the left here, you'll see a birch bark cross showing. That's the head of the altar right there. Seats about 250 people. You get a nice, beautiful, sunny Sunday morning out here. There'll be upwards of 500 people standing room only. Now coming out in the largest open basin of the lake that's uninterrupted by... Now the shoreline in front of the boat, going in each direction as far as you can see. This is the family camping area I mentioned back to the dock. This is known as Rocky Wold Deep Haven Camps. It's ROCKYWOLD-Deep Haven. The kind of a camping area where you bring a tent or a trailer. You're actually renting rather rustic bunkhouse style homes. Several of which you can see here along the shoreline, and several of which are more back in the forest, but they all have water edge access. Rocky Wold Deep Haven Camps have been at this site for over a century. And right after they first opened a century ago, out of necessity, they'd wait for the lake to freeze over in the month of January, and then they would come out in the ice, generally in the area that we are right now. They would plow the snow off the surface of the ice in the area roughly the size of a football field. They then had a sawmill saw that was modified and put on skis, and they would bring that out. With that big round blade, they were able to lower it right down on the ice, and they would cut up the ice into 12-inch by 12-inch blocks. Once they had the whole football field, if you will, cut up into blocks, they then cut a channel back to shore, and they float the blocks all the way back to shore through the channel. They're hoisted out of the water and stored in an ice house they have in the premises. Once the ice house is filled up with tons and tons of Squam Lake ice, they then pack it all down with sawdust to retard the melting. And when they open in the spring, the workers will bring in a nice fresh block of Squam Lake ice to put in your ice box and keep your perishables cold. Sticks over the side, just like leaving a juvenile home all day by himself. I don't see any activity up there, but you may want to scan the surrounding trees. You may see some eagles in the surrounding trees. Not seeing any activity, unfortunately.
No, I'm not either.
Okay, we'll turn around here and move on.
Where would they go? Somewhere else?
Well, they're flying about the lake right now. They're staying within view of Mom and Dad. Hopefully we'll see them over on the other side of the island once we get over there.
Do you see the nest?
Yeah, it's in between the flat. You see the flat, the tree with the flat top.
Yep.
There's a crux where all the branches come together and it's stuck. There's very little twigs left.
Now this is a new nest for this nesting pair of bald eagles. They have been on this lake since 2003. And I'm going to show you the old nest in a minute. In the old nest, they had 18 eaglets in that old nest in the span of 10 years. You count this. You'll be able to see it much better when I come along the side of the island and the nest is silhouetted against the sky.
Oh, yeah.
I stated 18 eaglets hatched out of that nest. As far as we know, they all survived.
See the nest?
And when they arrived here in 2003, it was quite an event. This lake was 56 years without a pair of nesting bald eagles on it. And when they arrived here, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, New Hampshire Fish and Game, New Hampshire Audubon all got together and they cordoned off the whole area of Little Loon Island in order to give the eagles a feeling of comfort and welcome. That lasted about 2 years. They took down the rope lines. The eagles could care less where the boats is online. Well, but over at the 11, 10 o'clock direction is Purgatory Cove. They had to hold on to that rock to survive until somebody came along to rescue them. The large rock they were holding on to is right out in the 10 o'clock direction. It's right in the center of the cove. It's got a lake gray top to it. And that's the rock they were holding on to. The rock the boat crashed on is just barely visible. It's to the left of the rock I just pointed out. It's a very flat rock. It's got some waves breaking over it. That's the rock the boat crashed on in the movie. So right here is where the scenes were filmed. I'm assuming that's the same one we saw.
That's a juvenile?
No, I believe that's an adult. That's a boat. I've had people, I had somebody on the boat about 2 weeks ago say to me, come on, is that really an eagle up there, or is that just something the science center's perched up there? Yeah. And then the eagle took off and flew right over the boat, and I never had to say a word. That's why we don't provide that. The entire movie was filmed in the house, around the outside of that house, or out here on the lake. Nothing was filmed in the soundstage. Made in this one.
I see light bulbs. How do they get electricity out here?
They're probably running off a propane generator.
Okay.
Now, as we get past this little point that's closest to us here, if you look over, you'll see a deck hanging out over the water, attached to the house. 3 years ago, they built their nest right underneath that deck. Nicely in the shade, out of sight, out of mind, and the nest succeeded with twins.
That was awesome. Going back to the dock. What'd you think, Dietrich? Did you have a good time?
I had a great time.
Look
This
at the
is
camera.
good time. Yep.